On the night of December 27, 1948, the weather in Miami was perfectly clear as Flight NC16002 lifted off the tarmac, heading for Florida. The aircraft was a massive Douglas DC-3, one of the largest passenger planes of its time, carrying 125 passengers and a crew of 9. 134 lives in total, cruising comfortably at 8,300 feet. At exactly 8:13 p.m., Captain Robert Miller reported a minor technical issue. Within 10 seconds, San Juan Air Traffic Control watched the plane's signal fade and disappear entirely from their radar. They had flown directly into the center of the Bermuda Triangle and hit an unrecorded, highly localized storm system. The vortex spun the plane like a toy, instantly frying the compass, radar, and every piece of electronic equipment on board. An atmospheric anomaly had swallowed the aircraft whole, instantly erasing its digital footprint from the world. Stripped of engines, the plane plummeted toward an uncharted island. Instead of slamming into the ground, the fuselage crashed into a colossal, ancient tree. Hundreds of massive branches acted like a giant net, absorbing the impact and miraculously keeping all 134 people alive. As the survivors fanned out through the undergrowth, they found themselves in a crisis of thirst. Despite scouting for miles in every direction, they couldn't find a single stream or spring. The island was a geographical dead zone for fresh water. During their $45 million rescue operation, the government searched the wrong quadrant of the ocean, hundreds of miles away. Search parties eventually gave up, declaring all 134 passengers lost. The survivors were now trapped in a geographical blind spot with no rescue coming. To keep panic from setting in, Captain Miller and a retired Army doctor named Evelyn Reed immediately divided the passengers into labor factions. One group stripped the plane for medical supplies, while another built temporary shelters using broken seats and metal siding. Food from the plane ran out quickly, and the nights brought freezing temperatures. Relief came when a teenager used his eyeglass lenses to focus the afternoon sunlight onto dry leaves, creating their very first fire. They needed protein, but the island was completely hostile. The group began snapping off strips of metal from the aircraft fuselage and grinding them against rocks to forge crude hunting spears and knives. After a passenger died from eating an unknown toxic fruit, a professional animal trainer from the flight taught the group how to set traps and wield their metal spears. They soon managed to hunt down their first wild boar, securing a stable food source. Driven by absolute necessity, these 134 modern citizens successfully constructed a functional, primitive hunter-gatherer society using nothing but airplane scrap and their collective knowledge. 2 years into their isolation, an engineer named Arthur Vance led the construction of a massive wooden boat made from vines and wreckage. 25 of the strongest survivors rowed out to find help, but a sudden storm capsized the vessel, drowning 16 people in an instant. As island resources thinned out, a search party pushed deeper into the uncharted interior. Hidden within the dense jungle, they uncovered ancient, crumbling stone ruins, and lying inside a nearby cave, a solitary human skeleton. Resting right next to those bones was a small, heavily rusted piece of metal that clearly belonged to an older aircraft. The survivors were not the first people to crash on this island. In their 8th year, a massive cyclone ripped directly across the island. The hurricane-force winds completely obliterated their shelters and agricultural plots, dropping the surviving population down to 82. 8 years of starvation, disease, and relentless storms had finally taken their toll. The group sat shivering in the mud without shelter, entirely convinced they would die there. Just weeks after the cyclone wiped out their camp, a violent earthquake hit. The tremors were so powerful they tore the ground open, uprooted trees, and fractured the island's rocky terrain. But that destruction exposed something buried. The violent shaking shifted the heavy, rusted fuselage of the DC-3, pulling loose a tangle of wires and bringing the plane's original radio panel back into the open. Simultaneously, scientists later noted a rare solar flare that surged through the atmosphere. This spike in radiation, coupled with the earthquake's physical shift of the wires, provided the precise atmospheric conditions required to carry a signal from the old radio. The engineer, Arthur Vance, noticed the newly exposed radio panel sitting at an odd angle. He hastily stripped the frayed wires and connected them to a dead battery, and for the first time in 9 years, a green indicator light flickered on. He immediately grabbed the mic and broadcasted a mayday. It took a highly specific 1 in a million alignment of a devastating geological earthquake shifting the wreckage, paired with cosmic magnetic interference, to finally allow a signal to break through the Bermuda Triangle. In Miami, an air traffic control operator heard the crackling distress call. He initially thought it was a prank, until Vance read out the exact registration numbers of a flight that had been officially declared dead nearly a decade prior. A massive, newly localized search operation launched immediately. Within days, the remaining 82 survivors woke up to see a U.S. Navy vessel sitting quietly on the horizon, ending a 9-year nightmare. In 1958, exactly 1 year after the rescue, acclaimed author James Baldwin interviewed the survivors and published the best-selling book, Lost in the Echo, meticulously chronicling their harrowing 9-year ordeal. 82 people walked off an uncharted island after surviving starvation, massive storms, and total isolation. Their ordeal proved that human ingenuity, solidarity, and the stubborn will to live can outlast even the darkest conditions.